Welcome to your Essential Business Briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, will the coronavirus epidemic do major damage to global economic growth? 20 years of France's 35-hour working week. Has the policy delivered on its promises? And a paper trail causing controversy in Germany as retailers criticise a new law which makes issuing receipts mandatory. First up, though, the world's second largest economy is facing significantly slower growth this year as a result of the outbreak of coronavirus, which has infected tens of thousands of people there. Hundreds of billions of euro was wiped off the value of Chinese companies in the past week as the markets took stock of the epidemic after the New Year holiday. The quarantined city of Wuhan is a hub for transport and industry, and major bases for car makers, steel producers and others have been shut down, with supplies to companies around the world facing disruption. To get an idea of the broader economic impact, I'm joined now by Mickey Levy, who's the chief economist for the US and Asia at Berenberg in New York. Mickey, thanks for being with us. Can you give us an idea of the scale of what this virus could do in terms of damage to the global economy? We're hearing lots of bits and pieces of information. What's the big picture from where you are?
The big picture is it's going to be negative. We hope it's temporary globally, but there's a lot of uncertainty. When we think about this, it's a distinct negative. It's a negative supply shock for China, which has been the driver of global trade and growth. It's going to reduce aggregate demand, reduce consumer spending in China, and also it just is a huge bottleneck for production processes, and we really don't know the extent to which it's going to affect global supply chains, but the definite answer is it's negative. So people who had been looking for the beginning of a rebound in global trade and industrial production, that's definitely going to be delayed.
So, we know that Chinese are big consumers globally. That has an impact outside of the country as well. But this supply chain side is something we're starting to hear more about. What sort of sectors are we talking about when we talk about potential disruption to supplies coming from China that go into products elsewhere?
China has become the global hub for production, manufacturing, and distribution. So if workers are unable to go to work and so factories are unable to produce, it's going to have a significant impact. And the problem is all we have so far to work on is anecdotal evidence. There's no hard data, but it will definitely affect everything from automobiles to IT to a whole array of manufacturing that China is involved in for supply chain.
How soon should we expect to start seeing some of that hard data giving us a clearer picture of the effects?
The next few pieces of data will be trade data, imports and exports from South Korea, Japan, Australia. These will be very important. Germany, U.S. The big exporters into China and then the destinations, and we're definitely going to see the impact. One thing I would note so far is there's been, as you know, a sharp decline in prices of oil and industrial commodities, reflecting the market's expectations that this is really going to hit global growth for a while. Let me add one other point, and that is, even after this epidemic ends and the residual impact on the globe fades, it's really a body blow to China. Every global company is going to be looking to reduce their supply chains in China, so it's going to have more of a lasting impact.
We've seen already the Chinese central bank stepping in to kind of take action in the markets and do what it can to counteract the effects. How much power does the Chinese government have to step in and try and reduce the impact that we're seeing in so many different sectors?
The Chinese government can try, but as you know, this has nothing to do with monetary policy. Lowering rates isn't going to change things if the PBOC eases policies. And I would like to make a critical observation here. Among China's middle and upper middle class, the Chinese government has lost a lot of credibility. So if you think about this as a negative supply shock, households are cautious, they're saving more, they're spending less, they're spending more on goods and services they perceive to be necessary, but they're dramatically cutting back on discretionary spending, autos, consumer electronics, hospitality and leisure. And this lack of credibility and lack of trust in the government that's grown over the last couple of years, but highlighted by what's happening in Hong Kong and now this. It definitely will drag out the recovery process, and so it really makes the challenge facing the government in China very, very, very difficult.
And consumer confidence is, the consumers are the driver often of when it comes to the overall picture in the economy, so that's very important. But I'm wondering, compared to previous illness outbreaks, SARS is a comparison that's been made several times, how long could this last for in terms of the effect on consumer confidence?
I'll be honest, we really don't know. It could last for a while, and you could see a lot of households, becoming more cautious, and that would be reflected as, saving a little more, not jumping back into aggressive purchases. And keep in mind, the base against which we're measuring this impact is not the 6% growth that the official Chinese government data suggests. It's way lower than that. And auto sales have been declining for a while. And so on top of all the other uncertainties in the Chinese economy, this really comes as a negative.
OK, that's great. Thanks very much, Mickey Levy. Appreciate your analysis from Berenberg in New York. We'll, of course, keep an eye on this story as it develops. Now, here in France, this month marks 20 years since the 35-hour working week came into effect for companies with over 20 employees. The policy was designed to decrease unemployment and improve work-life balance. It's been the subject of huge political battles in its two-decade history, defended by the left and criticised by the right. Let's hear from two Socialist Party ministers from that time now, starting with Martine Aubry, who led the bill through Parliament.
Job creation should be the big winner. Thus our campaign slogan, free time for workers, an opportunity for job creation.
The 35-hour week is an important achievement that even allowed some companies to become more competitive.
So, has the 35-hour week aged well? Kate Moody's been finding out. Kate.
Well, Stephen, it may still be the rule, but it's now also widely seen as the exception. The right to a 35-hour work week is still fiercely protected in France, and it remains the legal standard for public sector and factory workers. At the time, the government hoped the measure would create up to 700,000 jobs. Estimates suggest it fell short. Statistics agency INSEE puts the figure at half that. Overall, the French do work fewer hours than they used to, 1,609 hours per year. That's about 60 fewer than the average 20 years ago, which is marked by that red line on our graph. Now, the 35-hour cap doesn't apply to everyone. According to INSEE, French farmers work the longest hours, nearly 60 per week, followed by artisans, shop owners and the self-employed, and then executives and managers. In 2018, labourers reported an average 37.8 hours of work per week. That's about the average that was declared by the French workforce as a whole. Now, it's largely because of a system that requires companies to offer extra holidays in lieu of additional hours worked or overtime pay. Many contracts are based on the number of days rather than hours worked. Labour restrictions have been loosened, in particular allowing people to have more part-time work. And the advent of automation is shaking up the workforce, although legislation has yet to catch up. Now, French workers are more productive than the G7 average, although productivity has stagnated in recent years. In France and other major economies, there's a renewed focus on how to achieve a stable work-life balance. Finland, meanwhile, is pushing for a 4-day work week, a format that companies around the world are testing out as well. Stephen?
Kate, thank you very much for that. Now, a new law in Germany is obliging retailers to print a receipt for every transaction. It's an attempt to fight tax evasion, but shopkeepers, customers and industry groups are already criticising the initiative. The government is standing firm despite environmental concerns, as Keris Garland now reports.
bad for the environment, and a waste of money. That's how German business owners are labelling a new law requiring them to print a receipt for all purchases on non-recyclable paper.
For me, it's annoying because out of 50 tickets I print per day, I'm going to throw 49 in the trash. Almost no customer wants to take them.
Coming into effect in January, the legislation has even attracted critics within the government. The economy minister urged Finance Minister Olaf Scholz to reconsider the law. But so far, he has stood his ground, hoping to crack down on businesses mostly dealing in cash, making them more open to tax fraud. Officials say auditors will easily be able to compare cash registers and the number of receipts printed, and point out that customers can opt for an email receipt instead. But with their high numbers of small sales now producing unwanted documentation, bakeries and cafes are particularly unhappy.
It's quite an expense for a small coffee place like this one to get paper rolls. And it's an environmentally conscious business. So I think it's a shame to waste so much paper.
The legislation also requires tamper-proof cash registers, which Trades Association ZDH says cost at least €1,000. But for now, the German tax union says there are no plans for officials to check up on retailers in the field, nor will traders be fined for not complying with the law. Several countries in Europe must still print receipts. France, however, is set to go paper-free by January 2022.
That's it from us for this week. Don't forget, you can listen back to previous episodes of the show as a podcast on Spotify, Stitcher and Apple. And you'll find the best of our business coverage online on our Facebook page, and you can tweet me at NewStephen. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Here at France 24, we're taking a broad outlook by talking about the women who are reshaping our world.
En France 24 en español no tenemos temas vedados. Y eso se puede ver en televisión y en todas las plataformas que tenemos en Internet.
في فرانس 24 لا ننسى ونحجز لكم أسبوعياً تذكرة عودة للمدن والمناطق التي كانت في قلب الأحداث قبل أن تدخل في طي النسيان.
Claro que tiene algo especial. Somos todos de distintos países y trabajamos con todo el corazón para entregar información en el momento preciso.
أخبار سياسية واقتصادية وثقافية وأيضاً رياضية بأعين خبراء رياضيين. هذه هي قناة France 24.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.